Hello, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel. Yesterday, Zelensky gave a speech saying that he would not withdraw troops from Donbass, specifically from the Donetsk region. In turn, the Russian Foreign Ministry stated that there would be no concessions on the four regions, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, because these territories have been enshrined in the constitution. So what is there to negotiate about, and how? I don't know. It seems to me the meeting will be practically useless. Well, the fighting continues, and we keep studying the situation at the front. Before we begin, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support its growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. So, friends, the front is quiet, but only quiet in terms of information. The battles continue, especially on the Dobropilya sector, and they are fierce. What exactly is happening there? There's very little information, but I'll give you what I have at the moment. What's going on? Forces have been redeployed by the Ukrainian armed forces, and not small ones. I'll even list them for you. They have transferred here the 93rd Mechanized Brigade, the 12th Azov Brigade, the 4th Rubej Brigade, the 1st Assault Battalion Da Vinci Wolves, and the 25th Assault Battalion. That's 3 brigades and 2 assault battalions sent to stop our advance, attempt counterattacks, and regain lost positions. Meanwhile, all day yesterday, literally the entire day, Ukrainian sources pushed a fake story that Azov fighters immediately launched a counterattack and in a single day succeeded in cutting off the entire salient along the Ivanivka-Pankivka line. Supposedly, they retook all that territory. In reality, that's complete nonsense. They didn't cut off anything even remotely close. Are the Azov fighters and other brigades attacking? Of course they are. That's exactly why these barbershop troops were sent here. But as for their claim about cutting off the salient, well, just look at the map. Here's the salient. What's its width? Let's measure about 9 kilometers wide. And they expect us to believe that in 24 hours, the AFU managed to cut off a salient 9 kilometers wide and more than 10 kilometers deep. Of course not. And where's the objective control footage? We are very demanding toward the Russian Ministry of Defense. When they make claims, we say, show us the footage. So let's also demand objective control footage from the AFU to verify if it's true or not. Should we have lower standards for them? On the contrary, they claimed yesterday that they cut off the salient. Fine, then show objective control footage from Rubezhny, Kucheryev Yar, Volney, or at least from Zoloty Kolodiaz. By the way, in Zoloty Kolodiaz, the Da Vinci Wolves Assault Battalion did indeed attack yesterday. They tried to enter the settlement, but retreated after heavy fighting. The Russian garrison and command managed to reinforce in time and repelled the assault. In addition, the 2nd Mechanized Battalion of the 93rd Brigade counterattacked toward the heights south of Kucheryev Yar, but also failed. They could not retake the positions. Azov's 12th Brigade is entrenching in the vicinity of Rubezhne and Novyi Donbass. Rubezhne itself remains roughly 50-50 under Russian and Ukrainian control. The western part is held by Azov, and the rest by Russian forces. Russian command also had to pull back the recon sabotage groups that had been active around Dobropilya, as I told you before, because otherwise they could have been cut off and surrounded. Overall, after the first day of Ukraine's counteroffensive, they achieved nothing. Those claims about cutting off the salient, honestly, they made me laugh yesterday. All you need to do is look at the map and see it's impossible even in theory. Of course, they will keep attacking, pressing, and trying to stabilize the situation and counterattack. But Russian forces and command are ready for this and are also redeploying additional troops to reinforce the newly captured areas from the unexpected 20-kilometer breakthrough. We will watch the situation around Dobropilya closely. This breakthrough is very important. Currently at an operational level, but could become strategic if Ukrainian forces fail to withstand the blow. From the positions near Zoloty Kolodiaz, the main cities of Donetsk Oblast are not that far away. Now let's move to other sectors. On the Pokrovsk sector, the fiercest battles are in the town of Rodinska, where Russian forces broke through a day ago. At present, the Russian army has success, already controlling 3 streets in the town: Pushkin Street, Lenin Street, and Orjonikidze Street. To clarify, they don't control these streets in full but partially. They also partially control Krasnolimanska Street. Rodinske is a very small town, only about 3.2 square kilometers. The problem is that there's a lot of multi-story housing, block after block. Storming head-on can bog you down here for a long time. Another option is to cut off logistics and force the AFU to withdraw. That's what the army is trying to do now. From the north, logistics are already cut. The road from the south, from Mirnohrad, is not physically severed, but is under full fire and drone control. Nothing can pass. The AFU are in a difficult position here. Given that the direct assault has already begun, it's possible the town could fall by the end of August. In Belitska, the Russian army is seemingly trying to take the town into a partial encirclement, blocked from the south, east and northeast. The problem is a spoil heap, Slag Hill, that dominates the area, and advancing from Mertsalov further north to complete the encirclement has not yet been possible. As for a breakthrough to Hryshine, right now it's the fog of war. For 2 days, I've had no updates from this area. Yesterday, I told you the latest info was that Russian recon sabotage groups were active on the village outskirts, but no new details have emerged. Overall, apart from Rodinska, the last 24 hours on this sector are covered in the fog of war. Hopefully today we'll get more concrete data to analyze and draw conclusions about where things are headed. Moving slightly east, in the last day, Russian forces advanced 2 kilometers north of Poltavka. On US maps, this is shown with a red highlight. In the Katarinivka and Klebanbek area, despite the roads being either cut or under fire control, the AFU are holding for now. The Russian army is heavily shelling Klebanbek to grind it to dust so that soldiers won't have to die in prolonged assaults. I also want to address fakes spread by some Russian telegram channels, claiming that 2 AFU brigades, or 3,000 soldiers, are encircled here. Look at the map. How could 2 brigades or 3,000 troops fit into this tiny area, standing shoulder to shoulder? This is nonsense. At most, there might be a couple hundred AFU soldiers here, probably even fewer. In Chasiv Yar, after capturing the town, Russian forces began moving west toward Mirolyubivka, advancing only 100,150 meters per day, as is typical for this sector, slow and heavy fighting. Better news comes from the Lyman sector. In the last 24 hours, control in Zarikne has expanded. This is important because with Zarikne, a large village on the right bank, 2 tasks are solved at once. Moving south from Torska becomes easier, and it opens a direct road to Lyman. Given that Russian forces are forming pincers near Shandry-Holov and fighting for Zarikne, they could potentially reach Lyman from both the west and east simultaneously. In Kharkiv Oblast, no news. In Sumy Oblast, silence as well. Ukraine's offensive there has stalled. Our side has no movement either. The front is static on both sides. That's how things stand. Hopefully by tonight we'll have more concrete updates from the Dobropilya area and more general news from the front. Now let's see what's going on in politics. The talks between Trump, the Europeans and Zelensky have concluded. In the end, no one said anything concrete. The same configuration as before, reports the Telegram channel Legitimny. Here's how the cases look. Trump threatens Putin with sanctions if the issue isn't resolved, while telling the Europeans he'll step out of the game. Zelensky, in his own reality, is not ready to give up all of Donbass, but is ready to discuss a freeze of the conflict along the current line of contact, without legal recognition. A freeze of the conflict with a guaranteed 100% unfreeze at any moment. Europe insists on guarantees for Ukraine. Trump agrees but does not promise them himself, hinting that this is the EU's responsibility. Trump promises that the next meeting will be between him, Zelensky and Putin, if everything goes well in Alaska. According to our information, things in Alaska will go very well. The globalists know this, which is why they're eager to disrupt or discredit it. Let's assume Trump has temporarily outmaneuvered the globalists, but now their controlled media will step in and shift the focus again. Conclusion: a Putin-Trump meeting will take place, and then it's up to them to decide what they agree on and how they will play it. One thing we can say, Trump is keen to push Russia away from China. We've reported this earlier. But China is confident in Russia and showed this to the US. Trump once again stumbled over China. For Washington, the fight against Beijing is more important than the one against Moscow. From this point on, nothing has changed in the global configuration. Bankova's position clearly shows they are set on disrupting peace talks. The latest demands, published by Politico, confirm this. According to a source, Zelensky's globalists are confident that Trump won't withdraw from the Ukrainian crisis and that all his tough statements are just more bluff. They're testing Donny's resolve. Bankova is very offended at Trump for negotiating about Ukraine without Ukraine. He didn't even invite Zelensky into the corridor, which they see as an insult to the respected leader. Zelensky is angry at Trump and will seek revenge, fully siding with the globalists who benefit from prolonging the war, achieving their goals through Ukraine, and dragging the war to a catastrophe and capitulation they will try to pin on Trump. The collapse on the Pokrovsk front is just the first signal of Ukraine's fragile defenses. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban commented on EU countries trying to get involved in US-Russia talks. When two strong men, the American and Russian presidents, sit down at the negotiating table and you shout from afar afterward, "You are pathetic and weak," Orban said. He explained that he is against some of the wording in the EU's statement, as he believes it makes Europe look ridiculous. Right now, we talk as if this war has an uncertain outcome, but that's not the case. Kiev has lost this confrontation. Orban stressed that the only question is when and under what circumstances the West, which supports the Ukrainians, will admit it. It's worth noting that Hungary, unlike its colleagues, does not supply weapons to Ukraine and opposes its accession to the EU. The collapsing country poses a threat to public safety, so they behave so arrogantly toward us precisely because they know that for now they are partly dependent on us. Hungary, even without supporting Ukraine's EU membership, is not interested in destabilizing the country. But if necessary, we could cause significant damage to Ukraine in just a few days. They speak to us arrogantly, knowing that we aren't deliberately trying to destabilize them. But we could, Viktor Orban said. Ahead of the Alaska talks, Ukraine has put forward its own demands for peace. Politico writes that Zelensky will demand from Russia payments of up to $1 trillion. The upcoming Russian-American summit has introduced its own adjustments to the policy of Kyiv's leadership and its European allies. Zelensky fears that Putin will deceive America and that Trump will push through an agreement that Ukraine disagrees with. According to Politico, to counter this, Zelensky and his allies will try to set red lines during an upcoming video conference with Trump. The demands to be voiced in that conversation include compensation from Russia for the damage caused to Ukraine. Estimates range from $500 billion to $1 trillion. The starting figure was named by Scholz back in July during one of the Ukraine conferences in Rome, security guarantees. Despite Trump's effective no when asked about Ukraine's NATO membership, Kyiv wants an alternative. Return of prisoners of war and children, the only point on which Russia and Ukraine have previously reached agreements and will likely continue doing so. A stable ceasefire before any territorial concessions. According to the outlet, Ukraine will be ready to discuss territorial swaps only after a ceasefire and front stabilization, maintaining sanctions against the Russian Federation. Ukraine fears that Trump might lift them and will try to ensure continued sanctions pressure. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Take care, keep your finger on the pulse, and don't let anyone fool you. See you in the next episode. It's going to be interesting.